everybody, welcome to The World This Week. The migrant crisis in Europe escalates with disasters on land and sea. Will China be able to contain its troubled economy? Horrific double murder on live TV in Virginia. And Donald Trump has done it again.
Sit down.
These are some of the issues we'll touch upon this Sunday. With me this weekend are Tal Shalev and Charles Biblizer of I-24 News. Tal, we'll start with the Iran deal. Give me the results. What's going on? How many? How much?
Well, it's been a summer of success for the White House. The administration has secured the support of 30 Democrats who will support the deal in Senate, and opponents of the deal have secured only 2 Democratic senators. And it appears at this point that Congress will not be able to kill the deal or override a presidential veto. But now the president has even higher hopes, and he wants now to even prevent this disapproval resolution to even coming to a vote. He wants a clear victory, not a message that the American Congress has voted against the deal. So the sale pitch will continue in the upcoming weeks, and it targets 14 Democrat senators who are undecided, and they're under heavy pressure on the one hand from public opinion polls that show that a majority of the American public actually opposes the deal, but on the other hand, a lot of intra-party political pressure is exerted on them, so the game isn't over yet.
Yeah. Well, Charles, if it's a done deal, what's next?
Well, what's next is basically Obama's pushing for 41 Democratic senators in order to support the vote, which would enable the Democrats to filibuster any potential legislation that opposes the vote. So that's really where things stand right now. And basically, if they achieve that, it'll be a major, major success for Obama. It will basically solidify the deal. It'll be a fait accompli, basically, and it will pretty be end game in terms of the diplomacy and the diplomatic process.
But then Israel and the U.S. will have to move to the day after. As long as this congressional debate continues and this fight between the Democrats and Republicans continues, Israel and U.S. cannot even start rapprochement. So that is the main anticipation for the day after. So
let's watch President Obama speaking to Jewish leaders.
Not only do we have a shared history, shared values, not only are we family, but even on this particular issue of Iran, we agree more than we disagree.
Charles, meanwhile, in the Middle East, things are the same or even worse as usual. Now we have Turkey bombing ISIS with the blessing of the United States. What's going on?
Well, this is basically months in the making. A deal has finally been forged. It was forged last month between Turkey and the U.S. Basically, Turkey will be incorporated into the anti-Islamic State coalition, and just on Friday, it was confirmed that they launched their first airstrikes. This being said, the Pentagon said that Turkey has now been fully integrated into the anti-IS coalition, but this remains to be seen. Turkey's been very, very hesitant to launch a campaign against the Islamic State, and if you juxtapose what they've been doing against the IS with the campaign in northern Iraq against the PKK, the Kurds, one can really see where Turkey's priorities stand, and it remains to be seen really how intensive they will be engaged in this campaign.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Okay, it's another week. It's another Donald Trump bombshell.
Excuse me, sit down. You weren't called. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. Go ahead. No, you don't. You haven't been called. Go back to Univision.
You cannot deny citizenship to children in this.
Sit down, please. You weren't called.
Charles, nobody believes this can go on, but it does.
It continues, and in the wake of all these kind of controversies, Trump's poll numbers continue to rise. So a new Gravitas poll put him at 40%. The latest Ipsos Reuters poll puts him at 30%. At some point, one has to believe that this kind of meteoric rise based on controversy will reach a peak, at which point Trump will have to convey some other message, but it's not hurting him in the polls. He's way out in front as things stand in swing states, early primary states, on a national level. It's quite an impressive showing, quite frankly.
People are starting to accept the fact that he could actually be the nominee, but an interesting thing is that both Trump and Carson are gaining traction because they're not politicians, because they speak against politicians. And interesting enough, Trump is creating a lot of concern in Europe because they're concerned that the Trump style will come over to them, and he reminds them, his vulgarity reminds them of Berlusconi or Le Pen. So actually, Europe is now concerned that if Trump succeeds, it could create a backdrop for a rise of the European Trump.
And then there's Hillary.
I have said repeatedly that I did not send nor receive classified material, and I'm very confident that when this entire process plays out, that will be understood by everyone. And it's not possible for people to look back now, some years in the past, and draw different conclusions than the ones that were at work at the time.
This is a person haunted by emails.
Yeah, well, and her polling is going from bad to worse. It's just very bad momentum for Clinton, and she's trying to reset her strategy with aggressive attacks against the Republican Party. We are hearing her talk a lot about the women. She called the GOP stand on women issues. She compared the GOP to terrorist groups over the weekend, and she's also attacking the migrant policy.
That being said, Hillary right now has a major problem. Her polling numbers are terrible. Since she first began being tracked by these polls in about 2012, she's at below 50%. Sanders has narrowed the gap at the national level to about 20 points. And this still might seem large, but she was at 50 points recently. As well, in New Hampshire, Sanders was, as recently as 2 months ago, down by 20 points. Now he's ahead in most polls. And in one poll in particular, Sanders is even ahead in Iowa. Hillary's got a big problem. As well, the White House seems to be moving away from her towards support of Biden, which could hurt him, which could hurt her if he runs.
Tal and Charles, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The migration crisis in Europe escalates with disasters on land and sea. Hundreds of thousands are fleeing Syria and North Africa. Thousands have died. Just this week, over 70 were found dead in a truck in Austria, and about 200 sank off the coast of Libya. With us from Geneva now is Joel Millman, spokesman for the International Organization for Migrants, the IOM. Thank you very much for joining us. This stream, Joel, won't stop. What's the scope of the problem as you see it?
We don't understand why people have to say invasion or crisis or dilemma so often. We understand there's a regulatory problem that's exacerbated by conflict particularly around the Mediterranean littoral. You know, unfortunately for Europe, never have so many conflicts been so close. And modern transportation technology and communications technology make these places like Syria or Libya or Afghanistan that seemed far away a generation ago actually practically in their backyard.
Meanwhile, we have seen thousands dying already on their way. Is anybody doing anything about it?
To say, is anyone doing anything? I mean, of course someone's doing something. The question is, are they doing enough? And what they're doing enough to stop the problem? Now, it deals with the symptoms, which is migrants on boats, refugees being forced out on boats by traffickers. It doesn't deal with the underlying, which is that the criminal gangs can often act in some of these countries with impunity because there's no authority to stop them. But we understand that in a place like Libya, the way it gets stopped is to have a ceasefire, a truce, a political settlement, and then the beginning of a government that European governments can work with as a partner to stop some of this trafficking. So, you know, that's the do something that we're looking forward to.
What countries do you expect to do something about this crisis?
If a government has a tolerant attitude, if the people there are generally welcome and are not afraid of diversity and newcomers and different languages and different practices, and they're confident they can absorb them and integrate them well, that's where immigrants tend to go. In places that are more hesitant, resistant, have not really grasped yet the enormity of the challenge ahead of them, that's where immigrants stay away. So I think that, you know, I take the kind of a libertarian view that people know what to do. They know where to go. They know where to integrate themselves most efficiently. In the case of migrants, it's probably where their family's already there. So I would say that the countries of destination that look like the largest in the foreseeable future would be Germany, Scandinavian countries, and the United Kingdom.
And meanwhile, do you expect more people to die in the high seas and on land?
Evidently we do, and it's something that saddens us terribly. The death toll this year has already surpassed this same point last year by I think about 20%. With the deaths today in Libya, and if you count the folks in Austria who probably just a few weeks ago were on the Mediterranean, we're talking very close to 3,000 deaths already on the seaborne migration to Europe, and that compares to 3,200 for all of last year.
Joel Millman in Geneva, thank you very much. And now the Democrats and the presidential campaign. Hillary Clinton tries to deal with her email problems. Joe Biden may or may not run. Bernie Sanders gets some traction. And Rhode Island's former governor, Lincoln Chaffee, is running a quiet campaign of his own. And he joins us this week. Governor, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
People say that you need to energize your campaign. What do you have in mind?
Well, it's a long way to go. We're in August, and the first votes are going to be cast in Iowa in February, in New Hampshire in February. So I know from experience that anything can happen in that length of time.
What is your strategy?
Well, I have a very good resume. None of the other candidates that are running, even on the Republican side, have my experience as a mayor, a governor, and a United States senator. Of all the candidates, over 20 running, Republican and Democrat, I'm the only one that has that broad experience. And in the Senate, I served on the Foreign Relations Committee, so I've traveled all over the world, and especially the Middle East, which is very, very important to the future of all our candidates and the decisions they're going to make, what we're going to do in the Middle East.
But is there any major issue in your campaign, major agenda?
Yes, my main issue is ending the conflicts, and especially in the Middle East. The United States of America made some very big mistakes after September 11th. We took a peaceful world, and yes, we had our differences, especially in the Middle East, but it was relatively peaceful and turned it into just endless conflict across the North Africa and spilling into Ukraine even. So that I'm running because I want to resolve those conflicts and bring those resources back home to our education, our healthcare, environment, and also those in those countries that are strife-torn. Much better use could be put to all those resources that are now going to killing and bombing and conflict.
But you know that many blame President Obama's policies or lack of policies in the Middle East.
Oh, I would disagree vociferously. In fact, that he took our troops out of Iraq, and I was going to too many funerals of American servicemen and women killed in Iraq and Afghanistan, and as governor and as senator. And now he's, of course, working on the Iran nuclear deal. That's trying to calm things down, and working with the Russians that maybe could help us in the Syrian civil war. So no, I would disagree. What we're doing with Iran and coming to the table and finding common ground, I think it's in the best interest of everybody in the region. If these conflicts just keep escalating, it's not good for anybody, especially Israel, in my view.
What do you make of the Hillary Clinton email saga?
Well, that's a legal issue, and anytime you get into legal issues and possibly not adhering to the law, that's a big issue, and we'll see how it plays out. But unfortunately for her, a self-inflicted decision not to take different personal communication devices. Most people do have their personal one and then have one for the government work.
Will you, Governor, welcome Joe Biden if he decides to run?
I do think that giving the voters choices is a good thing always, and this is America. Everyone's free to run, and there should be choices. On the Democratic primary side, there's only 5 of us now, so one more make it 6. I think that's a good number for the voters to choose from, and he has great experience. Vice President going to be 8 years at the end of his term, and of course a long time in the United States Senate and a long time on the Foreign Relations Committee.
Right. I understand that you should know Jeb Bush very well.
Yes, yes I do. We were back in high school days.
Were you roommates at some point?
Yes, we were in the same small dorm. They called it a cottage, so there were only 11 of us, and for 1 year, and then spent 2 other years in the same class. But it's been a long gap since then. Those were high school years, and we really didn't cross paths until recently when he was governor of Florida and I was senator, and then now on the campaign trail.
Right. Surely you have some impression of him.
We were friends. Of course, when you're that close at that age, and you're that young, different things happen. But I welcome him to the race, and He's in the Republican Party, and some of the positions they're taking over on that side I disagree with, on immigration, on women's issues, on bellicosity towards the world. I disagree with some of the issues, but as a person, I still consider him a friend.
Do you think Donald Trump will eventually overshadow Jeb Bush?
We'll have to see how that sorts itself out. He's never held an elected office. I think generally Americans want to see our candidates be elected to something before they run for president.
Governor Chaffee, I thank you very much and good luck.
Well, thank you for your good questions.
And this has been The World This Week. We'll see you here next Sunday. Have a great week.